7:03 on a Friday morning, and you are watching the Now Morning Show. I am Ayanka Will, and this morning, even though it may be commonplace to not play in flood waters, we do want to explore the dangers of to make certain that in this hurricane season, we, the citizens, and everyone in Trinidad and Tobago remain safe. To do so, joining us via Zoom, we have Dr. Saeed Rahman, the Director of Veterinary Public Health in the Ministry of Health. Dr. Rahman, good morning.
Hi, good morning, Ainka, and good morning to listening public of Trinidad and Tobago.
Thank you very much for joining us, because with the onset of the hurricane season, flooding is an issue and safety continues to be a challenge with health specifically, especially in the pandemic. So tell us why, to begin first and foremost, what are the dangers therein?
So as you mentioned before, perennial flooding is a problem in Trinidad and Tobago, especially during the rainy season, which we are in now. And as a result of that, there are a lot of public health concerns concerning flooding. Waterborne diseases are common during times of flooding, particularly things like E. coli, salmonellosis, as well as leptospirosis as a disease that affects humans and animals. We also have vector-borne diseases such as increase in dengue because of breeding mosquitoes and the like.
Right. Now, granted that we haven't had any sort of outbreak of those specific items within recent times, would you be able to statistically still say when those things happen, when we do have floods, for example, with the last dengue outbreak, what sort of numbers have we in fact experienced in the past? And what are we at risk of experiencing in the future with the onset of the pandemic?
Well, because of our past years with the pandemic and our concern with what was happening with coronavirus, a lot of attention was not paid to actual case numbers for dengue and the like. But we continue to have cases of dengue fever, and we continue to have cases of leptospirosis and other diseases. Gastrointestinal diseases are very, very common post-flooding. And so those things continue to happen every year, and we continue to see them in the clinical environment. And that is why the Ministry of Health is promoting good food safety, water safety habits, and also preparedness before and after flooding. So it's very, very important for us to recognize that these diseases can affect us and our families. Some of these diseases, like leptospirosis, for example, can penetrate our softened skin. So playing in recreationally in floodwaters can put us at risk of developing leptospirosis. And these diseases can be fatal, can cause severe damage to our kidneys or liver. We also have foodborne diseases like salmonella, cholera, and E. coli 015787 particularly, are very, very debilitating to young persons and older adults. In fact, E. coli 0157 has been shown to cause hemolytic uremic syndrome in young children, and is something that we need to protect our families for. And that is why we are promoting, as the Ministry of Health, practices to ensure that we do not ingest contaminated food, contaminated water, or play recreationally or otherwise in flood areas.
Then let's get a little bit of that preparation, perhaps, that we can do before anything happens to make sure that we are taking the best route. Let's talk some prep steps that the public can take to guard against any sorts of health risks.
So many people know that every year they are affected by flooding. And so as a result of that, one is in the early stages of building and to construct their houses in a way so that it eliminates flooding within their living environment. Sometimes this is not possible. So in terms of preparation, we advise that you get waterproof containers to store your foods, move your appliances, especially things like refrigerators, above the flood level so that they are not affected during flooding. Remember that food is very expensive and is a very perishable item. And if it is contaminated by floodwater, or if, for example, you have a power outage and you do not have refrigeration services, your refrigerator is out, then over time, perishable items within the refrigerator will have to be discarded to prevent one from becoming sick and from developing these foodborne illnesses. So also having a proper storage of water. Water is very, very critical during flooding. We consume a lot of it. So making sure that we either have bottled water stored or properly covered tanks that will not be contaminated during flooding is also very important. So these sort of steps are preventative, and we need to also stock up on cleaning materials for flooding and personal protective equipment. Make sure that we have gloves, we have proper boots, we have bleach in abundance, and whatever other cleaning utensils that would be required, so that post-flooding and during flooding, we can use these items to keep our families safe.
Right. You've mentioned during flooding, so we've gone through a bit of prep. What can we do when we are in the midst of a flood? Any tips there?
So in the midst of a flood, first of all, you want to protect your physical environment. So certain appliances, for example, you want to unplug, because you do not want your families being, it's not just the microbiological dangers of flooding, but also one becoming electrocuted during flooding because of exposed outlets. So that is one area. The other thing is that during flooding, you want to make sure that you have a safe source of drinking water. Now, if you can boil water, then that is best. You can bring water to a complete boil, and then I'll leave it to stand for 5 minutes and then containerize it properly. If you have bottled water, that is fine as well. Make sure, however, if your bottled water has been contaminated on the outside with flood water, that you rinse them properly. We also can use non-tainted bleach, meaning bleach without any dyes or any added scents, to disinfect water. The recommendation is usually around 8 drops of household bleach to a gallon of water. And you can add that, leave it to stand for about 30 minutes, and then that water will have become decontaminated by the chlorine in the bleach. So that is one way of purifying water. The other thing is to look at food. It is important that we inspect our food carefully to make sure that it has not come into contact with flood water. And if it is, we have a saying, when in doubt, throw it out. So if you are doubtful as to the safety of that product, then discard it. Bearing in mind that food does cost, and for some families, especially in some rural areas, it's a major burden on them, the cost of food, but still you want to keep your family safe. So make sure and throw away as well fruits, vegetables, and other meats and so forth that may have come in contact with flood water. You may have food containers that will be safe. For example, canned foods and so on would be safe, but if their labels have been sogged, then you should remove that label, rinse them with potable water, and then store them properly so that they do not become further contaminated.
Sounds good. Very doable, and as much as in the heat of the moment we might be a little flustered, definitely things we could employ. Now, beyond the flood, after the damage is done, what do we need to do post?
So post-flooding water tends to stagnate. So number one, we do not want to play or wade in that. We need to supervise our kids so that our children are not playing and exposing themselves to the pathogens that might be present in that flood water. We also want to remove as much garbage from our area, remove pools of stagnated water as much that we can, bearing in mind that we need to protect ourselves while we're doing this cleaning. So wearing protective clothing, gloves, boots, masks if they are needed, so that you employ these things prior to cleaning. It is good to make a disinfection solution using bleach. We recommend for cleaning 1 part bleach to 10 parts water. So 1 cup of bleach to 10 cups of water, and you can use that to sanitize your home. Remember that you need to remove as much dirt and stagnated water as possible. Bleach does not work well in the presence of high organic matter, meaning dirt. The chlorine binds onto dirt. So it's very important that we clean up all that dirt and debris that was left after flooding before starting. We always say clean and then disinfect. So you want to clean as much as possible, remove all the debris and the mud and slush that was left back from flooding, and then proceed to use this sanitizing solution to mop, to wipe down, to clean your premises. Again, as I said, protect your water sources and protect your food sources and discard anything that you are in doubt about.
Now, you're giving us a lot of information, all very useful, but we're probably going to need to revisit it. Where can we get all of these details and more?
So the Ministry of Health has on its Facebook page and on its website most of these warnings and most of these advice that are posted in a poster form. So it's very important for us to look at it. And we can also, for example, post it in our community centers for those areas that are flooded. It is good to print copies of these. They are in printable format. Print out these posters, put it in areas to be as a reminder to the population, those at risk, to continue that. And we advise that you share and like our Facebook page and these pages as well. And you can put them up as your own social status on your own social media. You can download these images as pics, put them up on your WhatsApp status, put them up on your Facebook page so that you do your part in protecting others from the problems that can be, public health concerns after flooding.
Dr. Saheed Rahman, let me say thank you so much for joining us this morning, for giving us quite the list of things that we can do to protect ourselves and our families, even our communities, against the dangers of flooding.
Thank you so much for having me, and stay protected and keep, posting our messages as well on your TV station so that we, do our part in protecting Trinidad and Tobago. Thanks again.
Absolutely. That was Dr. Saheed Rahman, the Director of Veterinary Public Health in the Ministry of Health, giving us some pre, post, and even during tips on how to navigate the dangers of flood waters. We continue to keep you in the know here and now, right here on the Now Morning Show. We'll be back to these messages.